I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I remain. How are we doing, everybody?
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast. This is Anthony.
This is James. We're going to do a little bonus episode for Dune. So IMAX released today. The trailer is going to be there, so you can pay like $20 or whatever for a ticket. Go watch the preview of like the music, some behind-the-scenes footage, and the new trailer for Dune.
Yeah, we unfortunately can't go, but I would love to hear Hans Zimmer's score. I'd love to see some new visuals, and I'd also love to see the cast and crew interviews they'll probably have for it. And it must look epic on IMAX because they filmed it in large format cameras.
Yeah, and I've been dying for this movie. Dune is my favorite book. I actually just read it for the third time. I just finished it last week to get ready for the movie because I've been salivating for this movie for over a year because
I got attest to that.
Got pushed back. You can tell. It got pushed back multiple times, obviously because of COVID and the lockdown, like a lot of films. But this episode, we're not going to spoil the movie. We're not going to spoil the plot of the book and the character. We're just going to kind of like give you a background on the characters and the world. We're going to start with just the production information about the movie and everything we know about that, so that if you want to just hear like some production stuff and you don't want to hear anything that, if you want to go into this movie blind, you can like shut it off at like 5 minutes in.
Yeah, in this movie, it's basically, and to sum it up, it's going to be a sci-fi epic on a grand scale with great characters, amazing special effects, action, and immense themes that are resonant in terms of the story itself. So all in all, it's going to be a wild ride that's going to be very enthralling as well.
It's like an adult version of Star Wars.
Yeah, that's
like
a good way to put it.
And this is a book by Frank Herbert. He wrote the first one. I think it was 1965. Mm-hmm. So he published the first Dune. He wrote 4 of them before his death. And this is just an iconic an iconic sci-fi book and story that, without this, there'd be no Star Wars. And I mean, you could probably say there'd be no game. This is like Star Wars and Game of Thrones had a baby, and that baby was born before any of those were made.
Yeah, George Lucas used Dune and Princess of Mars, the John Carter series, as inspiration for the Star Wars idea. And
plus samurai movies.
And samurai movies. So it's a combination. It's like the Tarantino of sci-fi, George Lucas, you could say. And like you said, there would be no Star Wars without Dune paving the way for it in terms of its immense storytelling across intergalactic storytelling, and it's such an extravagant movie. I mean, such an extravagant story. There's so much to it, and it's going to be a challenge for the filmmakers to put it on screen. They failed a couple of times, and there are several productions that just never got underway, like Jodorowsky's Dune. So hopefully, with someone like Denis Villeneuve behind the camera and steering the ship, he's also producing it. This is his first one he's producing. I have the utmost faith in him.
Yeah, and again, the information we're going to talk about in terms of the lore, this has been available for almost 60 years, so it's not like we're spoiling anything you couldn't find out yourself. And not to mention...
Don't blame us.
Yeah, David Lynch... Yeah, so we're obviously warning you for in a little bit. David Lynch made another adaptation in 1984. Was that the year it came out? And that version, it's just not very good. Like, I think I love David Lynch as a director, but he's just... It's a good thing he never made one of the Star Wars movies, too, when he got offered it by George Lucas, because his vision and his style just doesn't really fit this kind of world.
Yeah, it doesn't fit grand epic sci-fi, whereas Villeneuve, he showed and proved with Blade Runner 2049 that he is perfect for epic sci-fi adventures. And, I mean, no one thought he could pull off a Blade Runner sequel, and he made a movie that you could argue is better than the first one.
Absolutely.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, so Denis Villeneuve, who we all know from Arrival, Sicario, he's made so many great movies, Enemy, Prisoners, and then obviously Blade Runner 2049. The cool thing about him directing this movie is he says that this is a lifelong childhood dream of his to make a Dune movie. Ever since he was 12 years old, he's like, my dream is to make a Dune movie. So he's been thinking about this for probably 35, 40 years of how he would do this movie if he got the opportunity to do it. So he basically used like Arrival and Blade Runner 2049 as like his way to prepare himself for this epic sci-fi adventure.
That's great how it comes full circle like that. And that's basically how someone like Chris Nolan, he prepared himself for epic filmmaking through the Dark Knight trilogy. And that's how he was able to make films like Inception and Interstellar and Dunkirk, because of his experience making the Batman movies with large scale, huge budgets, giant sets, and a lot going on. So I think that's a great point, that he's like basically been gearing his career towards finally making this movie. And Hans Zimmer is the same thing, where Hans Zimmer, obviously being Nolan's composer, he was going to do the music for Tenet, but he was unable to because Dune needed the music as well done, and he chose to do Dune over Tenet, telling Chris Nolan that Dune was my childhood favorite story, and it's always been his dream to make music for Dune as well. So I think that both Hans Zimmer and Denis Villeneuve are clearly extremely passionate about the project, which is going to make it probably show them produce some of their best work probably ever.
I think so too. I think both of them are just going to give it everything they have, which is why I'm even more excited about when you hear the stories about both of them, probably two integral parts of the film besides cinematography as well, just how much passion they have for the project and the story. And so the script was done by Denis as well as John Spates and Eric Roth. And Eric
Roth's great.
One of the best screenwriters out there. He did Forrest Gump, Benjamin Button, Stars Born, Ali, Munich, Extremely Loud, and Incredibly Close. So he's a great writer. And then for cinematography, we have Greg Fraser, and he did Rogue One, Vice, Zero Dark 30. He did the Batman. So he's got a bunch of great credentials and a ton of great work to look on and to be excited about for this film.
Yeah, and you can tell just from the trailer how stunning the visuals are. And us knowing the books, we know they haven't even shown anything crazy.
Nothing. They haven't shown anything.
Like, they've shown one sandworm, two sandworm shots, and then a little bit of like some army stuff, and like not even battle stuff, but just showing the armed forces, and that's it. Like, there's so much to this book that I cannot wait to see, and let me tell you, they have not given anything away in the trailer,
which is what's great. And and then production design is by Patrice Vermette. He does pretty much all of Villeneuve's movies, and so the first movie, it'll only be about the first half of the book because this is like an 800-page book, and there's a lot to cover. And so what Villeneuve is planning is he wants to make it a 2-part film to be able to tell the entire story, not leave things out, because there's so much to get into with this. You know, it's like Deathly Hallows. You got to do that in part 1 and part 2.
There are a lot of important characters in the story. It's not just Paul, who is Chalamet's character. Like, Leto has a big role to play. Lady Jessica has a big role to play. But then the Freemen have very important characters, and then other characters on other planets play a major role in the story as well, including the Baron and a few other people. So the story has a lot of very big characters that need enough story time and enough screen time. And really, the only way to properly tell the whole story is by making 2 movies.
Absolutely.
You can't either a miniseries or 2 big movies.
All right, since you're dropping some names, so here's your warning. We're about 8.5 minutes in. If you don't want to hear about the lore of Dune and you want to go into the film completely blind, I would suggest shutting this off right now. But if you want to learn about the characters and the plot and the story and the world without spoilers, then keep tuning in, because we're going to get into it right now.
Yeah.
So
and we're talking about the book.
Yeah, we're the book and the characters. Yeah. We're not going to talk about what happens later on. We're like setting up the film, because I think it'll just be so much easier for people to understand, because it's something completely new and people are going into it blind, and you might be able to interpret it way better if you kind of have an idea of the world.
Exactly.
So what the hell is Dune? It's basically, like I said, Star Wars mixed with Game of Thrones. Again, book published by Frank Herbert in 1965. And so Wikipedia actually has a very good plot of it. I tried to write one myself, but I think theirs just works really well. So I'll read the Wikipedia plot. And so Dune is set in the distant future, 10191 AG, which is 26,392 AD. It's a very distant future. And this is a period where
Jeff Bezos is still alive.
Yeah, he kept himself alive. This is where humans have evolved so far into intergalactic and interplanetary travel. So we can travel at the speed of light. And we can go pretty much anywhere. We've conquered and taken over and colonized thousands and tens of thousands of planets in the galaxy. And amidst a feudal interstellar society in which various noble houses control planetary fiefs.
I think fiefs.
I think it's fief. It tells the story of young Paul Atreides, whose family accepts the stewardship of the planet Arrakis.
And that means that his family is granted the ability to control that planet and be in charge of it.
So basically, there's this intergalactic universe emperor who controls everything, and there are these noble families that kind of run the planets and control the different planet systems. And the Atreides, they're basically like the protagonists, or you could say they're like the House Stark of the story.
Yeah, and the planets don't really have countries. It's just one noble family, and part of the elites of the overarching society. They oversee certain planets.
Yeah, and so Paul Atreides, who is Timothée Chalamet's character, he is the lead character of the Dune franchise, and I think I'm just going to say right now, Timothée Chalamet was perfectly cast for Paul Atreides. I couldn't picture anybody else doing it.
Yeah, technically he's supposed to be 15 years old, as in the book,
and shorter.
Yeah, and a lot smaller. But I think that this role it's very complex, and he goes through such a huge transformation throughout the story. So I think that you need a top-notch actor who is an adult to really convey what's going on. So he was a great choice.
And so, actually, let's just get away from the Wikipedia plot.
Yeah.
So basically, the Atreides family, they're basically hold a fief over this planet called Caladan, and they've been there for generations. And Paul's father, Duke Leto, is the Duke of the planet, and he's in charge of the Atreides house family. And his mother is Lady Jessica, who is a Bene Gesserit, which is basically like some sort of mythological witch of that time. And so the Emperor has the Atreides move from their planet of Caladan to Arrakis, which is also called Dune, because they want the Atreides to take over Arrakis and be in control of that planet for them. And also their arch enemies, the Harkonnens, led by Baron Harkonnen, they're the current house that is in control of Dune and Arrakis at the moment, but the Emperor is having them leave and having the Atreides family come in there to hold fief and control over Dune.
And Dune, or Arrakis, is the most valuable planet in the entire known universe because it has the most important resource imaginable, and it's called the spice. Melange. And then the spice is basically, it's this material on the planet that gives people the abilities, like mental abilities, helps you live longer, all sorts of unique abilities that are impossible to attain as being a normal mortal. This spice gives you that, and so it's a renowned resource that everyone wants, and it also helps power space travel as well.
But most importantly, so it helps space travel because it gives people who take spice prescience, so you can see the future to an extent. So that's why it's a highly addictive drug technically, and it's needed for intergalactic travel because it's not just like Star Wars where you hit the light speed drive and we're gonna go to warp speed in Star Trek. It's you have to take the people who navigate. They take the spice so that they can see in the future of
where they'll land,
where they're gonna be if they're traveling at the speed of light for so much amount of time. But also throughout the universe and galaxies, the spice is an addictive resource that people take. So the Bene Gesserit witches, they take the spice for their prescience. And also the Fremen, who are basically the natives of Dune who live there, they're also addicted to the spice and are kind of help control it in a way. But also Dune in Arrakis, as well as being the most valuable planet in the universe because of the spice, it's also probably the most dangerous in the universe as well one of them, because it's almost uninhabitable because the entire planet is a desert. And there's basically hardly any moisture there, and so it's a very difficult place to live. But there are people that live there who live on Arrakis who are kind of like in like metropolitan areas in a way, and they kind of are a little more civilized. But then there are the Fremen who live in the desert, and they're big mystery to the Emperor, to the Harkonnens that are there, and to the Atreides when they get there.
And they understand that land better than anyone else ever will because they've grown through generations there. And also, on top of being a harsh climate to live in, Dune is also filled with giant sandworms. So if you saw in the trailer, there are 2 shots of these gigantic sandworms. And what they do is these are ancient beasts, prehistoric beasts that have been living inside the earth of Arrakis, and they safeguard the spice. And so as people gather the spice, they come at risk of being encountered by these giant sandworms. So it's a dangerous thing to gather the material of the spice on Arrakis.
They're also the cause of the production of the spice too. Mm-hmm. So that's why they're the only place in the universe where there are worms, and that's the only place in the universe where the spice is, because they're intertwined. And the book and movie go way more into that. So that's just like a little brief background on the worms. I don't want to get too much into that.
And I just want to say I love what you can see already from the design of the worms in the trailer.
Me too.
I think that because what people have done for animations online, and also what they did in the previous adaptations there's a TV series and then there's the previous movie. I saw them and I was like, this is kind of like, it doesn't really, I'm not really feeling it.
Even Lynch's version looks kind of weird.
Yeah, it doesn't really hit it. And then when you saw this trailer, not only did they look incredible, but they seemed like they were monumentally bigger than the other adaptations. Like they're so gigantic, like
which they're supposed to be.
Yeah, they're insurmountably large. And the other adaptations, they were big, but not like impossibly big. Where I really think that they knocked it out of the park in terms of the design.
And so Paul Atreides, who's going to be played by Timothée Chalamet, is the lead character, and he's a very special character because he's been going through this Bene Gesserit witch training from his mother, so the whole entire story encompasses like so much of like politics, religion, ecology, technology, human emotion, and spirituality, and all these different factions of these empires and how they're all kind of connected in that way, and tons of corruption as well. And so Paul is being trained by his mother from a very young age in her practices of the Bene Gesserit. So Paul is a very capable person. Has an incredibly high genius intellect, and he's also prescient before having the spice as well.
And the reason for that is because his mother, Lady Jessica, at being a Bene Gesserit, she is supposed to have a daughter because only women can be involved in the Bene Gesserits.
In the Bene Gesserit plan generation, they plan every birth in their entire line.
Exactly. And so he was supposed to be a female, but because Lady Jessica fell in love with Duke Leto, their love bore a son instead of a girl. And so technically the son isn't allowed to be in the Bene Gesserits, but he still contains the powers that they have, which is unheard of for a boy.
But because he's basically a male Bene Gesserit, it's believed that he is this prophesized being that will relate to their presence on Arrakis and on Dune, which we won't get too into.
Yeah, but he will like the chosen one, so to speak, is supposed to have powers that no one ever could have achieved on their own, and so he's supposed to be they think this person.
All right, let's go through the rest of the cast as well. So we have Rebecca Ferguson plays Lady Jessica, who is Paul Atreides' mother, but she's the concubine of Duke Leto, who is played by Oscar Isaac. Then we have Gurney Halleck is played by Josh Brolin, and Gurney Halleck is basically Duke Leto's like right-hand man in general, and he's also one of Paul's trainers. So Paul, in addition to being geniusly smart and gifted and well-versed in everything intellectually, he's also an extremely talented fighter and martial artist, and so he's trained by Gurney Halleck his entire life, and also by Duncan Idaho, another soldier in the Atreides line.
The most American name in the whole series.
And he's played by Jason Momoa. And then we have, let's see,
Dave Bautista as Robin.
Yeah, Dave Bautista as Robin, and that's in the Harkonnen line.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so the Baron Harkonnen is going to be played by Stellan Skarsgård, which is a perfect casting. So Baron Harkonnen is just like this. Like I said, the Atreides are like the Starks. You could say that the Harkonnens are kind of like the Lannisters in a way, but except more cruel and more vicious, and they don't have the beauty really that the Lannisters have, well, especially the Baron.
Oh, yeah.
So because you'll see what he looks like, and you're going to be like, holy effing, what the hell is that thing?
And the Baron, Stellan Skarsgård, the reason why they got such a high-profile actor for this role is because he's going to be the main antagonist of the whole story.
Yeah,
and he's going to be, you guys have no idea, this character is crazy. It's such a wild character, and I cannot wait to see his performance. And also, from the couple of shots you see of him, it looks like the makeup and prosthetics they put on him, he looks unbelievable as the Baron.
It's going to be wild. And then we have, let's see, so Thurfer Howat, he's going to be played by Stephen McKinley Henderson. And so Thurfer is a mentat, so he's basically what they call human computer, basically, because they got rid of computers thousands of years before the events of the film and the book, and now humans take on that responsibility.
It was
Skynet. Yeah, it's Skynet. And humans are trained, as they're called mentats, to be supercomputers intellectually. And so he's part of the Atreides. And then we have
Zendaya.
Zendaya plays Chani, and also Javier Bardem plays Stilgar. Chani and Stilgar are members of the Fremen people, and Stilgar is basically one of their leaders, and Chani is one of their young members who, obviously, if you watch the trailers, I'm sure you've seen them.
Yeah.
Has some sort of connection with Paul Atreides at some point.
Yeah, they start hanging out.
Yeah, they start.
They go to the movies together.
Let's see. Liet Kynes is going to be played by Sharon Duncan Brewster, and Liet Kynes is basically another leader of the Fremen. I don't want to spoil too many things, and Liet is also responsible with, when the Atreides come, communicating with them in representation of the Fremen.
And then Charlotte Rampling's going to be the Bene Gesserit, what's her name, who does the test with Paul.
Oh, Mohim.
Yeah, Mohim.
Gauss Helen Mohim.
She's important to the Bene Gesserits.
And then we have, who else is in huge actors? I think that's it for, Chen Chang plays Dr. Yue.
Yeah.
And so that's another great important character who is working for the Atreides. And so we have about 3 months until this film comes out. And I highly, highly recommend, if you got the time, if you can read like 10 pages a night for 3 months, you'll bang it out. Read the book, at least get it from the library rented. It's a phenomenal read. Once you get to like within a couple chapters and start understanding what's going on, you won't be able to put the thing down. I'm telling you. But yeah, I don't want to get too much into it. I think we
shouldn't get into the plot at all.
I think we covered pretty much everything to give you a basic knowledge of what the movie's going to be about, the characters, like the kind of the rules of the world.
I think it could possibly be a little confusing if you walk into this completely not knowing anything at all. But I mean, I'm sure they wrote it in a way where anyone can walk in and understand it, but this is just to give you a better grip of the story that's about to unfold, so you don't have to spend time thinking about who everyone is. So hopefully we laid it out pretty simply, what the basics of the world are, what the basics of the cast are, so that when you watch this film, you have a better grasp of who everyone is.
Exactly. All right. I don't want to spoil anything else or get into anything else or give the plots or the conflicts away at all. I want to keep you all on your toes going into this film. And if you read the book, I highly recommend it. Thanks so much for tuning into this bonus episode of Everything We Know About Dune.
Take care, everyone.
Enjoy it on October 22nd. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning into Raiders of the Lost Podcast. Find us on all audio platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcast, everywhere. Weekly episodes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, plus bonus reviews throughout the week. Find us on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, everywhere. Thank you so much for listening around the world. Feel free to watch one of these other videos right here.